the whole entire time. I can't wait. Sixers, Celtics tonight. Some things we have to account for, clearly, for this game. But beyond it, just looking again, it's depending on where you are, -3 for the Chiefs. The money line continues to go up, though, despite the juice and the line fluctuating 2.5, 3 on Fox Bet, at least. I've seen the money line now jump up a little bit. I can't imagine that's going anywhere. Here's the thing. One of two things are going to happen. One of two things. It's going to be, oh, Mahomes, good to go, no problem at all, cleared, or Mahomes is out. It's not going to be 80% of Patrick Mahomes, who we know is out there. That's not going to change anything. That's not going to move the line. If anything, it would move the line towards the Chiefs. So that's what I'm saying is if you really want to look at where the Chiefs are going to get an advantage on any value right now, it would be as the line sits, because most likely, first off, you can pretty much bank on Mahomes playing. At what capacity, if he's still banged up, any of these other things, who cares? He's out there. Who cares? Mahomes at that moment, if he's 80%, if he's 89%, if he's 91%, if he's 67%, whatever the hell it is, here is what he's not. Chad Henne. That's what the big, beautiful bet is on the Chiefs just winning the football game. They don't lose this game. It's not, you would need so much more to go wrong for the Chiefs than even Chad Henne starting that football game. But that's not even a conversation I think we're even at this point. Honestly, I really don't think that we are even near that point tonight. But maybe as the week goes on, it starts to evolve. Until then, I don't see it. No Seth Curry tonight. You do have Embiid back. Pretty big game tonight. No Jason Tatum due to COVID protocol. Not even traveling to Philadelphia for this 2-game series, if you will. This is a big opportunity on a back-to-back in exactly the schedule that we knew was going to be in front of a team like the Sixers early, where this is a nice early test for the Sixers tonight. Are you going to take them on a 5-point line? No Tatum wouldn't concern me as much as like no Embiid. I was trying to think that out, and we'll look at a couple of these props too and keep going through the AFC Championship game. Heavy tonight. Our buddy Michael Calabrese, Action Network, SDS, is going to join us as well. But if you look at least the next couple of games, knowing that there's a pretty big opportunity here for the Sixers with Simmons, with a healthy Embiid, to take, I wouldn't say steal, because steal kind of assumes that they don't belong there. That's like the 7 or 8 seed stole a game on the road. I don't think that there's that big of a gap. There's that wide of a gap right now between the Sixers and the Celtics. Sure as hell isn't that wide of a gap without Jason Tatum out there on the floor. So I wouldn't use the word steal, make up ground, take over. If you look at where they are, a game behind the Celtics or ahead of the Celtics, and can continue to establish some ground there. But I wouldn't use steal on a team that even record-wise isn't there. But we know that there are 2 games at home, and we have a nice little break Thursday night. But these next 2 games, from the Sixers standpoint, ahead of time, and this is where Doc and the team have the luxury, if you will, of managing this, but ahead of time that you have to get 2 from Embiid. You're not dealing with a back-to-back situation for back-to-back nights. You're just dealing with a back-to-back when it comes to the team you're playing, which is 100,000 times more manageable for Embiid in his situation. So there shouldn't be minutes restriction. There shouldn't be concern of him gassed out tonight. There shouldn't be any of that when you have the day off, and the very same team who you do have to go out there. You can't, I would not sit Embiid Friday night. Granted, you've got Detroit 2 games in a row following that. If anything, you could sit him against Detroit 2 games in a row. So what's the pressure? Where's the issue right now in forcing Embiid to sit out on Friday night, playing him 48 minutes tonight, and then all of a sudden on Friday night, he's out of gas, you got nothing left, pull him in the second quarter, don't play him at all? No. You know ahead of time, you can use the schedule to your advantage here. Over the next 5 games, you've got 2, and they happen to be back-to-back, where you don't even need the guy. It would be nice to have him out there for one of the games against the Pistons, but if you really want to look at a statement that could be made at home, of course, and this is another big part of it, is that you've got the Celtics now for 2 straight. You go on the road, you handle your business in Detroit. It's easy. You get in, you get out. 2 games, it's fine. Not even back-to-back, technically. Sunday, you can do whatever the hell you want. Auburn Hills, you can find something to do, I'm sure, if you don't just fly back and get the hell out of Dodge. But on top of it, you have the Lakers then at home, and we know that that Golden State Warriors loss that we saw earlier this week is going to be hanging, and this team can easily go on a run. And this is part, or could be early part of that run. And that's dangerous. Very dangerous. Tonight, all eyes on the NBA in that 7 o'clock tip, South Philadelphia, as this is the game, at least early on, of the night. From a betting standpoint, if you really wanted to take advantage of no Jason Tatum, I think that's where you're starting to see people. And this thing has dropped 5.5, 5. Now it's down to 4.5 on Fox Bet. Granted, the juice reflects it being more accurate at 5 because on Fox Bet, I'm laying the 4.5 at minus 118. I don't hate, if I really wanted to, the money line is minus 188. We're going to have to do something with that. In fact, I'm waiting on a game to go on the board here on Fox Bet, because Michael Calabrese, who's going to join us at 7:30 tonight, gave me this game tonight. And I imagine that if you are listening now, and even when we talk tonight, it'll be on the board then. But I don't necessarily think it's on the board now. Abilene Christian. So that's a good game to match up something like with the Sixers. Wow, the Mavs have flipped from 1 all the way to minus 2. That value is gone. Sixers, though, at minus 4.5, if you really wanted to take advantage of this game and no Tatum, see the 4.5, 5, up to about 6, 6.5, where you start hitting that second possession into that third possession, into that Boston is just not moving into the ball anymore. They're just trying to run the clock out like the Sixers are. No real threat of a backdoor cover at 6, 6.5. I feel okay there because I do think that the Celtics will scrape, and I do think that they'll scrap, and it's not so much like they don't have anybody at all to fill in that void with Jason Tatum. It's just that Tatum is a special player, but this could easily be a Brown Smart night. This could easily be a night in which you see Walker facilitating and opening some things up around, and that's where I think Boston keeps this close. They are deep, and they've played without guys before with this similar unit. So this shouldn't be any type of major surprise or panic mode because, oh my goodness, Jason Tatum is out. You really want to lay the 4.5, go ahead. I don't think that it's a terrible play. I just wouldn't right now. I would try and work this game to my advantage and know that even at 3.5, that hook on that one possession victory, I'm still okay there. So if I could, ideally, I'd like to drop this down to minus 3.5. And from there, package that with something else, because I know that if I'm laying 118 on minus 4.5, it's going to be a little more just to buy that point. But if I'm looking right now on the app, it's not outlandish. I mean, minus 138 for 3.5. I might as well just push it for the 3 and have the push and play at minus 143. Now, this is where having that Calabrese special on the board really helps, but I don't think it's going to be up there yet. It's amazing. A 9:30 tip, and this game is still not on the board. I don't know what they're waiting for by any means. I've watched this now in my favor because I'm rolling with Abilene Christian, as Calabrese told us to, and you'll hear why coming up at 7:30. But I've watched this thing drop from 5 to 4.5 to now 3.5. It's just off the board, so I can't pull the trigger on it. Unfortunately, we're dealing with the time crunch here because while that's an ideal spot to be in to pair something like that, a minus 110 with it, you've now really cornered the Sixers into a good spot where they're just about winning this basketball game. And 4.5, the difference of a 3-point victory, not covering but getting by, or a 1-bucket victory here. Playing a little bit with fire. If you would feel better about it, you could always run with the money line, but the money line at minus 188 may not be the return you'd like. You know what, though? To be honest with you, I think I'd rather be there. Just talk my way out of it. What are the odds? Fox Sports Radio The Gambler. We've got a lot of things happening here, but I think just talked myself out of the 4.5 down to 3.5. I'm just going to run with a money line. In fact, if you look at the combination, even once this game comes back on the board, the Abilene Christian game, or anything that you could get at minus 110, maybe you've identified immediately it was the Mavericks at +1 earlier in the day, but that thing is dropped. I'm watching it again, minus 2.5. It's dropping as we speak. That may still be enough for you, minus 2.5. Okay, I can get them. They can definitely beat them by more than 3. I'm in there. Anything that you match with the Sixers at minus 188 at minus 110 or better is going to at least get you 193 back on the positive. So I'm okay. Now that we've looked at the math working out for us, as well as the bet itself making a lot more sense, I'm actually okay here. It's just now identifying what that second leg would be and really rolling with it. You could always drop Brooklyn down a couple of points in Cleveland, or maybe push that thing up to like blowout proof mode in Cleveland. See how many points you really would be able to extend that by for the Cavs. I mean, you could take it really up to like 25 here, but that's not going to get you anything. It's going to drop it to minus 142, just Cleveland by plus 25 at minus 900. Something a little bit more manageable, more reasonable, hovering around 200. You could look at 15.5 or plus 16. Plus 16, that should be pretty damn good. And that gets you at least a positive return on the parlay at plus 125. So that's another thing to think about is even if you wanted to drop it a little bit, you could extend it. A game like that tonight, we really talking about the Nets pounding this team into dust, is 15.5 or 16. Now, 15.5, 16, that's pretty much where the value would stop. If you'd like, 16.5 is the same at 16 and minus 213. It's going to get you plus 125 back if you ran that with the Sixers money line. Is that really too much or not enough, I should ask? That's the better way to look at it. Is that really not enough for you? 16.5 points tonight against the Nets. James Harden, Durant, but the lack of defense and the ability to really do much defensively as a whole now, and how much they really were decent to be bad now, that's more of like stay away from a total for me than it is, all right, they're going to just blow a team out. Like, I think they can convincingly beat the Cavs by 13, 14 points, but that little safety net of 16.5 points, I mean, if they beat them by 26, and the highest you could go on this app would be 25 at minus 900, then what are you going to do? You did everything possible. You tried. You laid everything out as much as you could. It didn't work. There was nothing else. It's not like there was anything higher you could go. If I drop 16.5 on this and they get beat by 20, again, I kind of have a similar feeling. Really? I mean, 20? That's what I need. I needed to lay 20 at minus 400 for this game. At that point, you just chalk up the loss. You say it's absurd. You move on. If you'd like to live in-game bet the Sixers, go ahead. I would strongly suggest that. There is going to be a run by Boston. They're a good basketball team. At some point, if you're looking at a favorable line for the Sixers, down 6, down 7 points, even if it's down 3 or 4, you might just get them as a pick 'em. But that's something to think about. Significant change right there. But this Cavs game, I'm not touching it. I'm just waiting for this Abilene Christian game to come back on the board, and then we can just continue. Unbelievable that I'm waiting, but here we stand. Early game done. Not a crazy slate by any means, especially when it comes to ranked teams. Although Clemson right now is dropping, just so you know, they were sitting at -2, dropped to -1.5, depending on where you get them. And even if you wanted to take the favorable juice for -1, -1.5, you could always just play him straight up on the money line at -120. That's a really good bet right there at Georgia Tech. We will chat with Michael coming up at 7:30, so just keep in mind there will be some things to look at. Kentucky at Georgia in game by the time we chat with Michael, but keep an eye on Kentucky in this game, especially if Georgia gets out hot, which I don't think will happen. In fact, it'll probably be the other way, where Kentucky's going to be able to get something done early and maybe create some distance. But even as I speak, I see this line bump up a half a point from 4 to 4.5. So if it hits 5, you might want to think twice. You might want to think that's your limit. I would not go any higher than 5. But again, knowing that they're hovering 4.5, 5 right now, before a 7 o'clock tip 40 minutes from now, and the line's still moving, it might be a good idea to just wait and see if Georgia can get out to any start, or maybe Georgia goes on a run 10 minutes to go in the first half, and then all of a sudden we're talking about that 4.5-point line down to 1 or down to or up to +1, +2, depending on how that swings. But even tonight, I don't necessarily know. The two big games that have ranked teams in Wisconsin and Houston, those numbers aren't big enough. That's really the crux of it for me, would be that they're not big enough numbers. Wisconsin covering 11.5, Houston covering 12.5. Tulsa's tough, though. Tulsa, if there were one of these two games that you would play the dog just straight up, it would be Tulsa. But you're probably, and even still, we can do this live here if you really want. If you really want to push me on this thing, we can see how much we can grab with Tulsa. Tulsa to 16 at -200. It's not that big of a leap. And that's another concern here, is that the most I can get is just 3.5 points up. That's not a lot. That's something that you normally get on these apps like a week before the game. In this case, Northwestern and Wisconsin, it's going to be a little similar as far as how much I can really stretch this. But the problem is I just don't trust Northwestern. Now, I can get them up to 15. That's a lot. But it's still, it hasn't moved much. 11.5 to 15. Neither one of these are really comforting right now. Tulsa going up to 16 and Northwestern going up to 15 from 12.5, 11.5 respectively doesn't really do much for me. That's a pretty big deterrent. If that's all I can push it, that's enough of a deterrent for me to just stay away. But if you are looking at one, it would probably be, Tulsa at 16 seems manageable. Again, I don't trust anything about Northwestern in this game tonight. There is something, though, with the fight in Tulsa by 16 points. Just the fact, this is one of these things where just the fact that we're going back and forth on it, or I am in my head and you are out there with me, unfortunately, I apologize, is probably a pretty good sign to stay the hell away, which is fair. Still, this Abilene Christian game down to 3, and I can't push the button off the board. Amazing. We'll wait. We'll wait patiently and see what we can get from this thing. Saw some awesome stats put up by Alan Bell, good friend of the program down in Nashville for CBS Sportsline at Sportsline. You can follow Alan at Alan Bell 247. Some of these are insane right now and might help you when it comes to totals, when it comes to looking across the board at anything that you can mine from data with player props. How about this? Brady, 61-9 in his career in games under 40 degrees. That's regular and postseason combined. We know that it's going to be 29 degrees and snowy in Green Bay on Sunday, but it won't be windy. And that's gigantic because this quarterback who is down in Tampa, that's not a big advantage going up to Green Bay and hosting Tom Brady. That's not as big of an advantage, I think, as people make out. And Brady's far from the only one who's playing at Tampa Bay that is no stranger to cold weather. Alan Bell also tweets a couple of other good ones. Packers have scored 13 or more points in the second quarter in 9 of their last 10 games. So think about what that should do for totals here. Now, I'll bring this back up from a different angle later. When you just talk about the Packers in the second quarter, getting a good return on it, mind you, and whether or not it's simply worth taking the Packers in the first quarter or even in the first half based on that. Another thing, though, to look at would be how that data right there would impact the first half total. And again, depending on where you are, you can mess with it a little bit, depending on the return that you'd like. 13 or more, you can pretty much account for if you're looking at that. 9 of their last 10 games, this Chiefs defense, this Bucs defense, while good against the run, definitely you can throw against them. Look what we're talking about, too. Yeah, it's not even about the matchup anymore with Green Bay so much as it is about who's actually going to stop or line up against Davante Adams and Aaron Jones and start there. As far as first half totals are concerned, what are the odds? Fox Sports Radio The Gambler, again, presented by Cure Auto Insurance. At Shander Show here. Hour from now, we'll chat with Michael Calabrese. Where it starts to get decent for a return, over 26.5 first half points will get you a return even money at plus 100. You really want to push it over 28.5, gets you plus 150. Okay. If we know that the Chiefs, why am I keep going back to the damn Chiefs? If we know that the Packers and the Bucs and that second quarter, you're going to get a burst. What's the likelihood that these two teams are feeling each other out or dealing with the weather or all these other things that might be used to describe a low-scoring first quarter? Even if you got a 3-0, let's just say you got something along those lines, 6-3, a missed extra point, and a field goal. 9 total points in the first quarter. Well, you know that's where the Packers do their damage. Second quarter. You know that 9 of their last 10, which is a pretty damn good number right there, they've been able to get at least 2 touchdowns with a missed extra point. Now, how much of that comes off possessions, 13 or more points, depending on if you can just get touchdowns. All of a sudden, knowing you're going up against a Bucs team that's going to be able to throw on that Packers defense, all of a sudden, over 28.5 at plus 150 doesn't seem that bad. You know, all of a sudden, looking at this number here and trying to get over that, it doesn't seem terrible, does it? Seems like a pretty manageable number. If you wanted to go 30.5 and get 31 points in the first half and really get greedy here and think this is going to be an early shootout, then you can push it at plus 210. Brady has thrown multiple touchdown passes in 9 straight games. That's the longest active streak in the NFL. What does that tell you? Go on that list of anytime touchdown scorers and look hard right now on anybody you can grab that he'll throw the football to consistently. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Gronkowski. I think you can start there by all means. You can sprinkle 4 or 5 guys. Even if you wanted to add a running back, that's fine. I personally would not. But you know that anytime TD scores, just look at it for the Bucs, okay? Antonio Brown is the other name that you would want to put in there. You just roll the dice that it's Brate and Miller are not going to be the only 2 guys to catch touchdowns on Sunday. I'm okay with taking that risk, by the way. If you are, that I am as well. Brown is 205, as is Gronk. Godwin plus 130, Evans plus 120. Everybody's getting you a positive return as an anytime touchdown scorer. If the longest active streak in the NFL continues against a defense that's not really known for stopping streaks like that, it's safe to say that one of those four guys, if not more, is going to catch a touchdown pass. Yeah, Fournette and Jones are going to be active, as they always are, but even still, we know that they'd rather run Fournette from the 3 or 4 yard line. Same thing with Jones, than throw to them. Plus, you have Evans, which is just a monster of a target. Tight ends as well. We're going to go Gronk here over Brate, although Brate at plus 320 gives you some good value. If you wanted to stretch it, go ahead and stretch it. But I'm giving you the 4 and trying to limit it and say that's where I would sprinkle this right now. Those 4 anytime TD scores based off that number. We'll get to some more here too. Again, Michael Calabrese, some college hoops, will lead you up 7 o'clock. That's when the tip between the Celtics and Sixers. And once that thing starts, we'll see if we can take advantage of anything early on with the Boston Celtics. What are the